This is Beyond the Bell Tower, where an elite group of North Carolina State University students give us a behind-the-scenes look at their steps to success and show us how they attain even their lofty goals. These students, who are in the top 10% of the country, are active in student support services at NC State, a nationally recognized program designed to provide support for low-income, first-generation college students. Nationally, this population has an 11% graduation rate within 6 years. The Student Support Services students surpass that rate each year and go on to become doctors, dentists, accountants, and engineers. They work at Google, Apple, and the NCAA. They have earned PhDs in Ivy League colleges. These students go well beyond the bell tower to reach this level of success.
Welcome to Beyond the Bell Tower. My name is Caitlin Sosby.
I will be hosting today, and I am here with Unique. Unique, do you want to share a little bit about yourself before we begin?
Yeah, so again, my name is Unique. I'm a sophomore here at NC State. My major is design studies with a business administration concentration. I am a peer mentor, and some of the groups and organizations I'm a part of includes Acts 2 Fellowship, which is a Christian organization, and Black Artists Coalition, or BAC for short.
I didn't know about the last two organizations. Would you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll start with the first one. So Acts 2 Fellowship, again, it's a Christian organization. They're part of a bigger church called Grace Point, and yeah, it's a really, really good program. It's a really good organization to get involved in. I mean, especially as a person like just learning how to fellowship with others and talking amongst others with your own faith and your own beliefs and things like that. It's a really good community-based Christian organization. And for Black Artists Coalition, it recently started up last year over the pandemic, and I was able to join, and it's been great. It's a good platform for Black artists and any types of art medium, whether it's singing, dancing, theater, painting, sculpting, whatever your art major is. Just a good place for, I guess, African Americans at NC State to come together and be able to share their own knowledge, their own, I don't know. I want to say it's a good way to vibe with everyone. And it's not exclusive to African Americans, but it's just a nice way to be able to have that space, that creative space to have at NC State for Black artists at NC State.
That's really important. I think especially with how last year has kind of been going down, that is a good space definitely to have, especially where you can be creative and where you can kind of let your voice be heard with other people who can also understand what that means for you guys. So I think that's really cool organizations to be a part of. I'm definitely glad you shared those because I didn't know anything about those. And I think that's kind of the beauty of NC State is there's so many things you can be a part of and just nobody knows about it, but they're so important. So as a part of NC State, as a design major, I wanted to talk to you a bit about different ways that NC State has expression. So like, especially the free expression tunnels are, I think, our biggest kind of piece for that. I kind of wanted to pick your brain about that and like what you thought the free expression tunnel means to you as a student.
Yeah, so when I first came to NC State and I heard about the free expression tunnel, and then I found out that we could buy spray paint in the bookstore, I was like, this is awesome. Like, heck yeah, let's do it. But I guess on a more serious note, I see the expression tunnel as a way to really just I don't know, I want to say like freedom of speech. Like you have the freedom of speech to be able to say and show what you want out there. I think it's a great way for like a person to voice their own opinions, concerns without too much, quote unquote, too much backlash from it, I guess, depending on who you just have to take in consideration. Because I know like not last year, year before, like some things happened with the free expression channel. But overall, I feel like it's a really good way to get your voice heard out there, especially if you're like advertising things for like these trillions of organizations and clubs, or if you just want to just tell someone, hey, have a nice day. Like walking through it is just so interesting to see, like, you see a bunch of colors, which is visually stimulating. And then second, some of the messages that you see showing like school pride, like Wolfpack pride, showing their people's concerns and things that are going on in the world, things like that. I think it's a really good way to embrace like that creative side of people's thoughts and opinions.
Yeah, especially because, like you said, it brings color to NC State. We're a school where brick is really prominent in the design. So being able to see something that's so lifelike and just vibrant like that is really cool. Oh, yeah. So if you wanted to create a project at NC State, kind of similar to what you've been working on, with the train station project that you worked on, if you were going to do something like that at NC State, and we will definitely get back to the train station project soon, what would you do and kind of like why would you decide upon it?
Like based off like the project I've done at the bus station, because it's a form of public art. So I feel like like maybe doing another public art piece at NC State. For one, the school is public, and for two, there's a lot of different like statues and landmarks, especially, and the school is large. So I feel like having a landmark or I guess like creating a public art in at NC State. I don't know. I feel like if I was to do something like that, I would definitely try to, I want to say, like, represent everyone in that statue or that particular public art piece at the school. So,
Mm-hmm.
A, it can be a really good landmark for people to go by, look at, or know how to get from point A to point B in a certain situation. And also to be able to show the community of what NC State is. Yes, we're the Wolfpack, but also everyone has their own different stories, opinions, and their own experiences. And I feel like that together, creating something that mirrors that would be a really good thing to see at State, as well as be a really nice thing for people to contribute to at the same time, to say that they contributed to. Kind of like how I got in the process of doing the bus shelter.
I kind of agree with that. Is it would be really nice to show the diversity at NC State. Speaking of kind of things that like diversity and like things like race and kind of like things like that, there's a lot of boxes that we check as trio students. So we're all kind of known as like first gen low income students. How do you view yourself as a first gen low income student?
Well, first, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I am a low income ish student. Feel like that's like a box that I would definitely check, but I'm African American, so that's another box. And the neighborhood that I come from doesn't exactly have the best press in media due to past activity with gangs and things like that. Um, when it comes to, and I feel like a word for this would be my positionality of like who I define myself as. So I mean, I would define myself as a student, also a woman, African American, a designer. I don't know. I feel like if I put myself in a box where it's like, oh yeah, low income or something of that nature, I don't want to say that it is me, but it's also at the same time like I don't want that to be something that people would view as like, oh, this is limiting like who you truly are. I feel like I
Yeah.
mean, we each have, like you said, we each have boxes that we can check, especially when it comes to gender, race, religion, or sex, things like that. So I don't know. I feel like it all depends. It all depends. I'm probably like messing up this question. But yeah, I guess like in saying that, and that helped a lot. But yeah, in saying that like
Yeah.
certain bosses shouldn't have to define necessarily who you are because I mean, we go through so many changes as human beings. And just because we check one box like one year, the next year it's a completely different box. So I mean
Yeah.
there's something yeah, it's always changing. But yeah, I wouldn't only limit myself to what the boxes would tell me that I am.
So speaking of kind of like what you were talking about there, you said you were from Charlotte, right?
Hmm.
So I don't know too much about Charlotte, but I'm kind of getting the same vibe as some people talk about Durham. So Durham is where I'm from, and a lot of people like when they hear that I'm from Durham, they're like, "Oh, that's not a safe place to be. That's full crime, and there's a lot of bad things going on." Would you want to talk a bit about your community specifically in Charlotte and what it was like to live there?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Charlotte, and the neighborhood that I live at now is called Hidden Valley Community, and it's kind of the same. Like if when people ask you about Durham, for me, when I tell people like, "Oh, I'm from Hidden Valley," they're just like, "Oh my gosh, like should I like come or like is that safe or things like that?" And I never viewed it as a place that wasn't safe. I always viewed it as a place that I will call my home, essentially. And
Mm-hmm.
recently, actually, in January, I actually worked with a UNCC grad student named Barbara Lash with a documentary that is retelling the narrative of the community in a positive light, so that media can understand that, hey, like, yes, things happen in the past, but it doesn't necessarily like define who we are now as a community and how we once were as a community. So that was something that I took to. And yeah, I mean, like, the community itself is, I don't know, it's pretty diverse. I would say you have different ages, different races, people who practice different things, have different trades, different jobs, and it's a regular neighborhood. I feel like all neighborhoods have like a good and bad side to it, but at the end of the day,
Definitely.
yeah, I'm like, at the end of the day, it's like whatever makes you feel at home, or like whatever you call home, that's your home. Like for me, Hidden Valley is my home because I live here. I've never really had that many problems with the neighbors, with the people. I mean, may have like noise complaints from like neighbors and music and stuff, but it's not that deep or anything like that.
And that can happen anywhere because, like, even though I say I'm from Durham, I live in a very rural part of Durham. So, like, I'm around a lot of kind of more country folk, and we still get the noise complaints, and we still have basically the same issues you get in every other neighborhood. So I completely understand. And you were talking about how you view your place as really diverse. So I got some statistics from a website on Charlotte, and it kind of goes with what you're saying that around like 40% of people are white, 34.9 are African American or non Hispanic, and 7 are Asian, and 6.5 are Hispanic. And there's about like 22.8% of the people in Charlotte who do not speak English as a first language. So it really shows kind of more of a positive side of things where it's like, look at us, we're kind of showing that we're not just one type of person, that we do have kind of an amazing background where you meet a lot of different people. So that's kind of going with what you're saying about your community. So I thought that was really cool.
Charlotte's definitely a salad bowl. It's a very interesting city. Very interesting.
So starting in middle school, you became involved with, I believe it's called the Blue Line Extension Project. Could you possibly talk about how you originally became involved and kind of where this project took you?
Yeah. Wow. It's so weird to like know that like I started this in middle school because I'm like 20 years old now, and I'm like I started this when I was like 12. But while in middle school, I was involved in a citizen schools program, which is a program for like just kids at the school who needed after school help or needed to be able to, yeah, it was mainly just an after school program. But in doing that, I believe I took like an art workshop, or like I got news from like a mentor, and they were just like, oh, we're gonna have this artist that's gonna come, and he wants to talk to you guys about something that is really cool. And we were just like, all right, cool. Middle schoolers, I'm just like, sure, why not? And getting there and listening, that's when I first met Tom Stanley, and I was just like, okay, this is cool. And he asked us to write down words that reflect our neighborhood, and and at that time, my neighborhood in Valley didn't really have great great media coverage at all. It was very negative. So it was surprising to see that almost all the students in the middle school who participated, we all had positive words to say, like hope, home. I know for me, I particularly wrote down the word peace. The word peace came to mind because I don't know, in living here I think I lived in the Hidden Valley for about 2 years at that time. But in settling in, I was just like, okay, like it's pretty peaceful. And with being with family and having friends, I mean, of course, you have your problems and things like that, but overall, peace came to mind more and more. So with that, the middle school that I was at, named Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School, also was working with kids from the Hidden Valley Elementary School, and they're about like less than 5 minutes away from each other in the neighborhood. The kids at the elementary school worked on silhouettes and different patterns that are used on the train station when you go see it. And the words from the middle school students are in columns that are beside each bench, at the station. So from there, I mean, we thought it was a one and done thing. Like as middle school students, we're just like, oh, he's probably not going to come back or anything. And then I think my sophomore year in high school. He was able to get back in contact with most of us from both schools, and we were able to see, like, he was just like, yeah, so this thing actually happened and it's installed. And I was like, that's so awesome. And we were able to talk, and we did a video with Basic Cable about our experience and what we thought about the project and how it impacted our community in a positive light. So from there, it's a weird timeline, but it's like so interesting to talk about. From there, I guess based off the video and kind of like me talking to him, and I was just like, this is so cool. Like, I would love to do something, like this again. He found me again. I was actually being an intern at the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. And he reached out and he was just like, hey, I'm working on this other project and I would love if you would like to work on it with me. And I was like, sure, like, this sounds cool. And that's when it kind of led to me being more involved in the process with the bus shelters that we're doing. So the bus shelters are, although it's a very small like form of public art, and I know it may like a neighborhood is just like, how is that going to help, the neighborhood? But I think one thing that can really help is the fact for safety reasons and then in seeing and walking on my street, I noticed that there's not really a lot of bus shelters for people who have like groceries, who have kids, and they just want to sit down, or they're walking from a long distance, and waiting at the bus already is a very long process. So I felt like having bus shelters, especially a bus shelter that showed you like that, I don't know, like I guess in a way represented your community, and you knew that it was like a small safe haven for you in a sense. So we started doing that, and that is still in process as we speak, or still in a work in progress as we speak. Um, but yeah, from there, it just opened a lot of more networking opportunities with a lot of other creatives in Charlotte, such as the lady who I worked with, UNCC grad student. And yeah, so that's where we're at now.
Looking back at that kind of moment, what do you think you felt like during this process?
Oh, I guess when I first started, like in middle school, I was super excited. I didn't know where this would lead to. I didn't think it would to this point. And then I guess over the next few years, I kind of left my memory. I would talk to people about it. I was just like, yeah, I'm doing this thing and it's gonna be great. And then I didn't really hear much from it. But then when I got to high school and seen it for my own self and seeing how like it has impacted the community in a way, and not only for commute reasons, but also just for the neighborhood to have something that is like it like this is ours. Like this is something that the kids, future generation who grew up, who thought of this of their community and did something to help give back to it. I felt like that was something that stuck with me, and I was just like, wow, that's incredible to see how people really relate to some of the words that are on there, like, oh, like familia and peace and love and things like that. And I was just like, it's just so interesting to see like how some people's stories isn't told the way it needs to be told through other platforms, the media and the press and things like that. But when you really have like those heart to heart conversations with people and your own experience and seeing how that plays out in it, it's a really beautiful thing to me.
Are you in contact with like anybody, like any of the students that worked on this project with you?
I recently reached out to one of my friends who was in middle school with me, and she did it with me, and she was just like, wow, that happened so long ago. And like we're trying to like get back and reach in contact with her for like the next video that we're planning on doing to show the bus shelters. But other than that, I haven't really been too much in contact with them. We all kind of went our separate ways at the like between middle school split and high school split. It kind of like
I
diminished.
understand that.
Yeah.
Now, my main question for that is kind of, do you remember like how they felt while doing this project with you?
I can't say. I feel like my earliest memory would be more so of like in high school, like when I got to see them again and coming together, and we walked in and we saw like the layouts and the blueprints and all this stuff, and we were just like, wow, like that's what we created, and we were so excited to be like, this is what's gonna be like in Charlotte, like on like literally like what about maybe like what 10 minutes away from our school, like we could go here. And for us, like I guess for students, like we use the light rail and adults as well to get back and forth to the center city to the university area city of Charlotte. So it was just really, I feel like they were like very excited to see how their hard work from like middle school has paid off to now, and it was just really interesting.
So is the light rail, because you were talking about how students are using it, is that like a really prominent thing? Because I know in Raleigh it's not as kind of like we see trains, but a lot of people don't think about using them. Is it more active, do you believe, in Charlotte?
Yeah, I think it's definitely more active. Maybe not now because the pandemic. Before that, yeah, it was a really useful piece of transportation for so many people, especially those who don't have cars. I feel like Charlotte is literally a circle to me. Like everything is in itself. It's very easy to get from one place to another. But when you have a light rail, or I don't want to say subway, a light rail. When you have a light rail that's like in the center, it's easy to like be like, oh, okay, like if I want to go to, like for me from where I'm at, and the station is about like a 10-minute walk, a 10-15 minute walk from my house. So if I go there and I'm like, I just want to get downtown, I can be downtown in less than like 15 minutes.
That's
So
not bad.
yeah, it's really cool. And I think the best thing about this, like the entire line of it, is that each station has its own public art installation in it, which reflects the area that it surrounds. So I feel like that is also really cool for especially tourists. When they come, they can see like, oh, okay, this station is like um has, I don't know, installations from like like a certain type of bird or a person that was prominent in that area, and they can be able to experience that little bit of culture and history that charlatans have.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the pictures that you sent me from the Blue Line extension. Did you kind of want to talk about these? But I'm looking at them and I think they're gorgeous.
I can touch on a little bit. I've used it multiple times. And so, like being an intern at the library that's downtown, it was very easy for me to get on there and just go commute. But as part of that is being able, I feel like for me, being able to go and see like I'm a part of this. Like I was able to help design this, and then when I'm seeing other people like looking around, like I've seen people like go all the way down and look at all the words and then come all the way back and view each artwork images, and they're just like, wow, that's really neat how they did that. And it's just, I don't know, it's like a conscious state of mind when you're like looking at art and you're just like, huh, what does it mean? Or like, what does this say? But when you have like words that like that show its meaning, it has an even deeper, like it gives you a deeper perspective of like, huh, this area, like even though it may not be the best, it still has a lot of positive connotations to it. And the people obviously who live here see that, and they want to share that with other people.
Yeah. All right. So with kind of like the ones you are currently working on now, the bus station, would you kind of want to talk about what your plans are for those and like how it kind of coincides with what you've done in the past?
Yeah, so the bus shelters that we're working on, the theme of them is it's a play on the word shelter in a way. So there's two shelters. One of them will be a shelter from the storm, and the second is all those who take shelter. The purpose for those would come from, we worked with the Hidden Valley Community Association, and I went to some of their meetings and we talked about how the installation will work and things like that. So with working with Tom and me being a community liaison to be able to like talk to people, like I think I talked to a couple of neighbors, um, and get their own opinion of what they would want the shelters to represent or what they would want. So in a sense, like the shelters, they really are reflected on the people of Hidden Valley, to those who call it home, especially for all those who take shelter here at Hidden Valley, or literally under the shelter of a bus shelter, or those who take shelter, same as home. So yeah, I guess in relationship to what I've done in the past with train station, the train station and things like that, like the theme of the train station was home, and it was, and I guess like the shelters being like coexisting with it, it's like the common theme, like, okay, here's home, how other people express home in the community, and then you have another part where it's just like, okay, well, they view home as like a shelter for them or a place that's like a safe haven for them in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting to kind of see how those two like work together really well. That kind of with my little design knowledge, which is from like one class, I can see how that works really well. So that's really cool. What do you feel like is the biggest takeaway for your community with this project?
I think the biggest thing for me was to be able to express the community's voice through art. Um, and I find it funny because like in high school and like a little bit in college, I was like so sure I was going to be an engineering major. And I was just like, yeah, like I'm going to go to school for engineering. But upon seeing the impact of how art is, upon seeing the impact that art had on people, it was it was very, I don't know, it opened me up to a brand new perspective on life and how art can really, really change another person's perspective. So from that and me being able to talk to people about their own experiences and like seeing other cultures and yeah, just the fact that we're everyday people, like you can just go and talk to a person and be like, hey, how are you? Or, how do you see your community being televised? Or how do you want your community to be televised or shown? And I know a lot of people may not think of art as like something that's like people like, oh, art is just art, or people be like, I'm not an artist. I'm like, no, everyone's an artist. Everyone has the capability of being an artist in some way, shape, or form. Even if you can draw a stick man figure, you are an artist. And then my friends be like, no, you're the artist, and I'm like, no, you're an artist too. And I feel like in doing this process with him and in talking to community members and things like that, like I mentioned before, just to be able to amplify their voice for them, especially if it's an older population, younger population, just to know that I have that social responsibility to be able to share my own experiences as well as the people who I live with experience. So that's kind of what I took away from it, and it ended up changing my entire major for college. So.
So going off that, since you did change your major, what is your plans? Like, what do you feel like you're going to do after college with the major you currently have? And I know you're a sophomore, so I know like it might change, but
It's still a little blurry now. I've really been interested because my concentration is in business administration, so I've been very interested in marketing, graphic design, things of that nature. But I feel like I still want to be able to try and really get the story of other people's. I mean, really get. I want to be able to like show other people's stories through visual representation, whether that be art or something like that, or even if it's a product that I end up working at a company for and it produces a product, but I want it to be able to have a special implication to that person or that group of people so that they can be able to, be able to have them involved in something, even if it's a small something, like being able to get your own narrative out there, like sharing your narrative and things of that nature. So I feel like that's something along the lines I want to go on. It's very blurry because I'm still relatively young, but
I find it kind of interesting though, because that's kind of really similar to my story. Less on the design studies pathway and more close to marketing because I'm in public relations. So, like, I definitely am doing it for kind of a similar idea of I want to share people's stories and I want to make people's voices be heard because our a focus on the public relations is listening to your public and seeing what you can do for them. So,
right.
I find that really interesting that we both kind of have similar desires of what we would like to do. So that's really cool. So I'm going to guess already because we've talked about this, but this project has really kind of affected your decisions for what you want to do after college. Would you like to talk a bit more on that? But you don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah, I can actually talk about the turning point actually that I found in deciding to change it and then like looking back on it. So while I was in high school and we had to do a senior exit project, and initially I wanted to do my project on the psychological effect of fashion design, but it didn't get picked for another reason. But so then I turned to architecture and infrastructure, and I was just like, well, I was kind of into engineering at the moment, but then I started seeing how art can be more implied to it to change how other people saw stuff. So the title of my project was called "The Aesthetic Effect of Infrastructure." Yeah, yeah, the aesthetic effect of infrastructure. So and doing a lot of research for that project and using various different forms of networking, I was able to talk to the CATS Transportation Center in Charlotte, got an interview with one of the design persons there. And I was able to really see like how has the Blue Line, essentially what I worked on, how is the art really impacting people? Because I was like, sure, art is awesome. And at that time, I was just like, well, how is it really impacting people? So in seeing that, I was just like, wow, it really like puts a positive spin on like people's cultures, people's experience, their stories, and what they wanted to say. Even if it's not word for word, like visually, that's what it showed.
Mm-hmm.
So in doing that, I was just like, this is really cool. And I feel like in my first year of college, I was still like, nah, I still want to do engineering. But things changed. And when I reflected back on what I've done in the past and working again with Tom Stanley, I was just like, I don't think engineering is for me anymore. And I knew I always loved designing anything. I loved DIYs growing up. I still do artwork. Still like even now, like I'm working on like a series of art series now. So I'm trying to like get that out there and things like that, which is tough. But yeah, like in doing that and yeah. Oh, I think that I don't know if that answered your question because I know
No,
I went
it
into
did perfectly. Going off that, what was that like? Do you remember anything from that interview that you did?
Yeah, so let's see, like in interviewing, he was I believe he was like director or like the designer of the Lynx Blue Line extension. Mainly his focus was like trying to figure out like the art installations and what piece would go where.
Mm-hmm.
So in talking to him, I was able to ask him a couple of questions, of like how do you think aesthetics, like the visually pleasing things to the eye have a positive impact on infrastructure? Because upon my research, I found out that North Carolina's infrastructure was a D. Like they have a report card and the grade was a D. And I was like, a D? I was like, that's terrible. Like that's one away from an F. Like an infrastructure is something that we rely on every single day and we don't tend to think about it, like roads, bridges, floors or ceilings or anything like that. So yes. So in looking at that and doing some more research on as to why that is a D, and I was just like, that's interesting. But then when I looked another source in how public art has helped transform that grade, I was like, that's pretty interesting how art can be able to have that effect to make something appear safer than what it was. So what I did was for my physical product portion of the project was I created two houses out of cardboard. One that had color, it had really good structure, had a very good modern flair to it. And then the other one was really beat up, really in a sense, I tried to make it as close to a cardboard shack as possible. And then when I presented it to the judges, I was just like, which one would you rather live in? And they had said, oh, I want to live in the one that's colorful, that has all these different things. And I was just like, huh. I'm like, so why would you want to live in the other one? They're just like, well, because it doesn't look safe. It doesn't look like it has any structure to it. So my goal for them to see was just like that when you have something that looks sturdy, that has like some type of aesthetic appeal of color of it or a story or anything that has like some type of historical context to it, you would probably trust that more than something that doesn't have any story or implication at all to it. It's just really cool. Like the entire process went really well. I still am even looking back at that project now, I still have the PDF and the entire paper, but even now to see like how it's like sometimes I go back and check and see like has the infrastructure like report going up or going down, especially since COVID, and COVID now has an even bigger problem. I mean, has an even bigger effect on it now, and yeah, and just to see how like public art plays in, I don't know, helping restore, I guess, the safetiness of infrastructure and other different types of buildings and things like that. But yeah.
So kind of transferring from that, one of like, since we're both NC State students, a lot of what we've noticed is like there's been a lot of reconstruction on campus. So we've had Tally, Hunt Hill, and even the bell tower has been like renovated and revamped. And they consider that one of their financial priorities at NC State. Kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that and how, especially because you've done stuff with infrastructure and kind of like the importance of art with it.
Yeah. So when I think about like the most, because I know like I was on campus a little bit before I had to go back due to like the pandemic the second time around. I was able to see the new construction for the bell tower. Well, I did see the construction for the bell tower, and then the construction for Hunt Library. And I was I don't know how I felt about it at first. When I saw it, I was like, this is like visually like pleasing. And then I thought about, back to my project. I was just like, more people would probably tend to go see the renovations and probably study up there because it looks cleaner, it's safer, appears safer, sturdier, has a very strong infrastructure, and it's fairly new. I mean, on the flip side, of course, some people may be like, nah, it's too soon. I'm not gonna like trust it yet. Like it looks nice, but maybe not. I'll stick to my old section in the lower half of or the opposite side of Kiel.
It's really interesting though that like they planned that, and I've actually just gone recently into the new section, and you're right, it does look really nice, and it looks like I see a lot of people over there because it seems like a nicer part of the library compared to other parts that people have been using in the past.
Right. And it's not to say that like the other half of the library doesn't have like that student culture or like I mean like especially like if like I know for me if I had one spot in the library I'll go to every single time. Like do I really want to sacrifice that one spot to go to another new spot? So it's all about like I guess a person like what they think. But even in Heal, like if I look at Hunt, like that library is amazing. It is gorgeous. But also like the story behind it is incredible. Like I don't know if you like I took a tour of Hunt my first like the summer of my first year of college, and even the yellow staircase, which I found was like a little interesting to me because I was just like, why is it so bright? And the and hearing the story about why the artist made it yellow was so it can be able to it will be able to it will allow people to socially interact with each other. So like you can see them, you can see the person like clearly. And I was just like, that's interesting because like the color yellow was bright, firstly. And secondly, when you put a person in that backdrop, it's like, oh, okay, you can see them and things like that. So I don't know, like it was just interesting to see how like different parts of the library was made specifically for the library, but also it has a lot of psychological like effects on students and how to positively interact, how to study better, and things of that nature. So I feel like when they kind of did the renovations at Hill, they kind of took that process and put it in same process from Hunt and kind of put it in Hill to be able to enhance the students' experience at the library. I feel like because like I was a library intern for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and the library that's like in Charlotte now is like it's pretty old. It's been there since before I was born, but now it's getting completely torn down and being reconstructed. And I seen the plans for it, and I was just like, wow, it looks insane. Like it is one is gorgeous, and you said like the lights and things like that. Like it really has an impact on like how a person enjoys themselves at the library or any building in particular. Like if you're in an office building and like more light, like more natural sunlight may actually help you perform better certain tasks than a dimmer light. Or if you have even like things down to like the fact of a mouse, for example. Like I have a wireless mouse here. I'm like, this is easier for maneuver if I'm like across the room and I can still get to my computer without having to go over there. Things like that. Just something that can impact a person in a way of without letting them know it impacts them at the same time, but also knowing that they were thought of in that process. So Charlotte, when you like add public art to that and you take community members' voices and like show that visually, it also like enhances the value of the place as well because more people are going to be like, oh wow, like that's pretty cool, or like what does this mean? And it just gets you more interested in the culture of like where you're at, or like makes you more aware of how you got there, or how did the people get to this perspective of where they're living, and how can you even gain that perspective in a sense. So
Yeah, it's something that like so it was really cool to like learn more about this with you. Is there anything you kind of want other like trio students and other people listening in to know before we finish up? Because I don't want to take too much of your time.
oh yeah, no, you're fine. I guess one thing that I can leave you guys with is, like I said before, everyone's an artist. Everyone has a story to tell, and no matter what way, shape, or form you want to tell it, it's important to get it out there to allow others to hear your voice, especially in the age of now when things may not be the best in your area based on like race or color or creed or anything like that. But other than that, even if you just want to say something as far as just like hi or let people know that they're loved, like you have the power, you have the voice to change that. So go and make a change.
Thanks for that. I definitely really enjoyed this with you.
TRIO Student Support Services Program and Student Support Services STEM are federally funded college retention and completion programs. These programs focus on academic, personal, and career support for under-resourced undergraduate students. At TRIO SSS and SSS STEM, our goal is helping our students reach their goals. We are currently accepting new students to our program. Apply today. Go to www.ncsu.edu to learn more about student support services at NC State.